Well, welcome to the Krijnen channel. We're here with James Jaffe, really excited to get to share some joy in music and chamber music and what it means to play together and to listen and to get to collaborate. All these things that we've been missing as we've been managing quarantine and isolation. Welcome, James Jaffe.
Hey, thanks, Scott. Good to be here.
It's so great to see you. And I was just thinking, it's June, and for a lot of musicians, that means camp or travel or festivals. If this was a normal June, where might you be?
Well, in the alternate reality where none of the pandemic happened, my friends and I would be in Burgundy. In France, we started this little chamber music festival 4 years ago, and it's called Festival Roland. And I I don't know. I just I'm looking forward. I'm looking forward to when it comes back, and I'm taking a break like everybody else, and I'm kind of recharging. So.
Yeah, I imagine typically we have so many things that we plan for, right? So that when you're whether you're conducting or you're performing, if someone says, "Hey, I'd like you to solo with an orchestra," that means you start to prepare and you look far ahead into the future. What an interesting time as a musician, where we sort of don't know necessarily what that future looks like. So we have some opportunities for reflection or kind of reinventing ourselves a little bit, or looking at what we've been doing and maybe having the opportunity to adjust.
Yeah, I bring up the metaphor sometimes. If you're performing, it's a little like being asked to drive your car around town all the time. And so then sometimes wishing you had a good chance to go home, be in the garage, tinker with it. And lo and behold, I think for the musicians who are still, working and practicing at home, it's garage time. It's time to figure out why you're playing and what you love about it and rediscover those things.
Well, so probably you had the opportunity to reach out to some folks and maybe do some things you might not have done, just because I mean, I know that during the course of my season, like it's pretty much packed. Every month is scheduled. Every weekend there's a place to go or something to
Right.
prepare for. Did you have any opportunities to collaborate or reach out with other musicians?
Yeah. One of them was this guy, Scott Krijnen. But well, besides getting to talk to you today, we're both going to be featured in a video that's coming out of the Brandenburg Six in a really cool arrangement for cello ensemble. And yeah, I've been in a few projects like that. I'm a member of this conductorless chamber orchestra here in San Francisco that's called One Found Sound. And we got into this really cool recording project that I would recommend checking out. And it's Polish composer Frederick Rzewski wrote this thing called Coming Together in 1971. It's just a really crazy minimalist sort of masterpiece. And um, it's both recorded instrumental parts and spoken text. The text comes from one of the instigators of the Attica prison riot, and that was like this just massive prison riot in the 1970s. But just talk about being able to connect with people in the time that we're in on some projects. First of all, the theme of prisons, um, but just second of all, I think overall it made us really dig deep into what is the sense of freedom, what is the sense of being locked in and cooped up. I think which a lot of people have had to um, had to deal with. But ultimately, what we came out the other side with, I think, really also paid some tribute to the title of the piece, "Coming Together." I feel like in this isolated time, it is those projects, like exactly what you're talking about, and a very big, giant theme in chamber music in general is that sense of coming together. What can we create given the circumstances?
Yeah, and so it's conductorless. This is One Found Sound, and of course, folks can find that. They have websites and Facebook and all this and all the usual social media outlets. But
Right.
it's a group based in San Francisco, and for the folks who might be listening who don't, always aren't musicians, conductorless meaning that it's being led by the musicians, just like a chamber music group would be. However, this is not just four members. How many in each section?
Usually we have about 3 to 4 string players, so 3 to 4 cellos, 3 to 4 violas, and 8 to 9 to 10 violins, and a full complement of winds. So if you start dealing with brass, percussion, everybody, you can have at its best really 35 people, 35, 40 people in a room, kind of like you're saying, no conductor. So it's a democratically run process.
And not only democratically, which is super nice, right? Because when you get to really, I think probably those smaller groups, but one of the nice elements to that is that your whole being is involved in the creation and the interpretation of whatever you're experiencing, and you really get
Right.
to put all of yourself in. That's one of the big things. But the other things that you get to really do is to rely on those skills which we work on so much, which is listening, which is a skill that we could all do more of, in just general society. But it's listening is the key, isn't it?
Yes. I'm sorry, what? No.
Yeah, listening.
Yeah. I think I think you said to me the other day when we were chatting about how often folks say, um, after coming out of listening to a beautiful chamber music performance, oh, wouldn't it be great if more people um, interacted in this way? And I think deep listening is the reason. That's the core of it.
Yeah, and all the edited projects that you see that are coming out and that we're all doing, we're all participating in. I mean, I think they're wonderful because it gives us an outlet. It gives us a chance to connect, with other people, and we get to still celebrate music and art and do all those things. But it is hard to listen when you're managing through a two-dimensional universe, and it's very different. And I find that we're old enough that we grew up without a world through our phones or a world through our computers. But for the next
Yeah,
generation of students, they all have phones and they all have access to this sort of world and this sort of communication. And it's sort of narrowing their scope and ability to sort of hear and be a part of the living world. And I wonder if one of the really important things, as you see folks dealing with isolation and trying to find ways to be expressive and to connect, is the realization that art and music just are fundamentally important to the growth and development of children, and just making sure that they stay alive in our schools, and that we find ways to get music into as many communities as possible as just a way
yeah,
of gathering and just kind of working on those fundamentally important skills of listening and connecting.
absolutely. That's so well said. I think in there's so many different angles that you could come at that idea from about how art is important. In that it has that capacity to connect us across other seemingly solid barriers that once you look at them from an artistic angle turn out, of course, not to be so solid. Um, and I also really like what you said about how there is a generation growing up now uh, with sort of almost internet in the bloodstream. um, and you know, I was wondering what it was going to be like because I did a bunch of streaming concerts once live concerts stopped being a thing in say March or so. And so I've sort of talking to other musicians too. It's been interesting. We were wondering, is it gonna feel any different playing in an empty room with just a mic on? Are you gonna have that sense of connecting with an audience, or is it gonna feel just like playing for a recording, or is it gonna feel like none of the above, kind of just like a practice session where you have your computer screen happens to be on? Um, I have optimistic news, at least from my very subjective experience. I felt like I was actually playing for people. Now, you could say that's it's all in your head anyway, right? But whether however you feel on stage or playing in front of a mic, and yet knowing that the music that I had worked on and practiced was reaching out through this 2D thing that we have here, and ideally in the best of circumstances sort of lightening somebody's burden for the day, whatever it was. um, it did have a live performance feeling. So the question that I'm interested in is what skill sets that we picked up during this time translate. How can we, for instance, if we have become more used to sending our things out via whatever media platforms and by live streaming, can that be a complementary element to some of the live performing things that we do in the future?
Yeah, I think, and also just because there has been sort of a yearning to connect that way, that the platforms are going to be more accessible for more people, right? Even the app acapella hadn't really taken off, and then this all happened, and
Yeah,
all sorts of people are having positive experiences, sharing and creating music that way. I do like that you said maybe as a supplement, because what I have noticed is that we found some ways to make it work for teaching because for the folks who don't know me, I teach groups of 60 or 70 kids at a time, and that was really challenging because the only way on the platforms currently is to mute all of their screens, and as a music
Oh,
teacher, it's
yeah.
very strange to give feedback without
Yeah.
hearing anything, and it
Yeah.
becomes that's challenging. But we did find ways that were like, okay, this would be a really great thing to keep. What an interesting way to do a composition project, or what a great way to do a reflective assignment. Where they might just record themselves on Monday, and this is how I play it without practicing, and then I can record practice. I can record myself on Friday. I can watch both videos. I can see if my practice was effective, and if that becomes part of their practicing, boy, I feel that they would be way ahead of where I was as a kid, where I would just practice blindly
Yeah.
and sound terrible,
Yeah.
and that was kind of it. So there were some sort of focused methodologies I think would be very beneficial to just how students practice or how any of us practice, with just more kind of awareness of the process and being okay with that it takes time to learn things. So I think that's a really big thing for what I process with the kids. Yeah,
Yeah.
I just miss the
No,
energy. Yeah.
it's true. That's another big teacher in and of itself, I think, is what you never miss it till it's gone kind of a thing. So what is it that makes it so special when we come together in a room and play, when we come together to a concert and listen? Um, I think somehow the artists tend to be a step ahead of the scientists on that one, and then the scientists end up right there saying, "Oh yeah, no, look, if you infrared everybody, waves of heat go through the audience at the same time. If you check the carbon dioxide levels in the room when something dramatic happens on stage, there will be a corresponding." So, um, and I think we're like, yeah, that is what happens, and the way emotion moves through a crowd of people, it's yet another thing that shows us that we're not so separate as might appear from day-to-day life, and one of those things that art just is without trying, I would say.
Well, I'd like to just transition, and I know you're gonna perform for us, but I'd like to transition to this thing that one of my orchestras, we have 100 kids in there, and they're from all over. Their backgrounds are all over. They have all sorts of different home lives, different histories that brought them up, into my classroom by the time they were 12 or 13,
Yeah.
and it's just a great reminder that working together is always possible, and that we can find solutions, and we can collectively share our knowledge and support each other. We can lift each other up. And I think because we don't have, some of the more standard things like testing schedules and things that are sort of required to us, but with a regular sort of curriculum, we have the flexibility to talk about what it means to be part of a community, and how we can make the
Mm.
orchestra sound just that much better if we don't just stubbornly play an F sharp the way we play an F sharp, but we listen and we adjust, and we're like, oh yeah, it's going to sound better if I'm a little bit flexible, if you're a little bit flexible, because the whole point is that
Yeah.
together we're better. So
Yeah.
um, and it's great to see all that you're doing, and the times that we've been able to play together have just been heartwarming and thrilling, because your capacity as a cellist is wonderful to witness and to listen to, and then also just to share music with you is very special. So I'm glad that for the next portion here we get to hear you perform a little bit, and so I know you have to make some adjustments to
Sure.
just switching from I'll talk the audience through what you're about to do here. Jim's is
Yeah.
going to switch from the Zoom microphone into the QuickTime microphone, because Zoom has algorithms that adjust the sound that equates his cello as background music or background sound, and so it negates some of those frequencies. So what he's going to do is share his screen, and I'm going to give him all of it. He's going to head over to QuickTime and use his external microphone so that you can hear him performing live. And it looks like he's ready. So at this point, however, he can't hear me. So I'm going to give him a thumbs up, and then he's going to tell you what he's going to play.
Okay. Let's hope it's coming through as it should. I see a thumbs up from Scott. That's good news. Um, you know, I'm uh, I'm in love with a bunch of pieces right now, and I think I might take a little bit of a detour and play you a piece that last night Scott and I were having a sort of a pre-recording chat, and he said he talked about playing a responsibly socially distanced Shostakovich quartet. And that had me thinking about this other piece I've been working on, which is the Third Suite by Benjamin Britten, written for the great Russian cellist Mstislav Rostropovich. And so we don't have time for the whole thing, but I'll play you a little bit of the end of it. And particularly, I just like love that Shostakovich connection because not only is the theme of the Passacaglia that we get to so Shostakovich-y, but there's a story about Britten playing this very piece for Shostakovich, and it's based on it, and you'll hear it near the end of what I'm doing. Um, it's based on the Russian Kontakion, and that's the hymn for the departed. And so it's just this incredibly deep, profound music. They had a discussion about whether it was Shostakovich's version of the hymn or Britten's. I'm going to play you Shostakovich's version. He gives you the option, but this is a very short 3 connected movements at the end of Britten's Third Cello Suite.
Oh, James, thank you so much. My goodness. It's just beautiful and and we live in a world of technology and the screen froze, but I wanted to keep recording because it was just lovely to hear the depth of the sound and it's the screen has frozen
I know.
on a lovely image of you, so at least it looks like a very
I'm
introspective
what
moment.
is going on with that? All right, what if I messing with settings? Normally
There
messing
you
with
are.
settings does
Welcome
something.
back.
Oh, here I am.
Well, that's great.
Well,
I think, I mean, and you know, I think we can, if you'd like, we can record the final part of it again live. But it was just the feelings were all the way through, and uh,
yeah, I mean, it's you know, it's an amazing, like, and like anything with that sort of tragic underpinning, there's something amazingly cathartic about it. I think
yeah,
that when you get to those final chords that he gives you, it's a clear message. I think that being forced to go through that painful separation that often manifests as death or whatever it is,
hmm,
even if it's just not having a normal sense of normal, or
sure,
your plans for the day or the week end up different. But yeah, and then that it's really a there's a great understanding in that moment from Britain, and it's I can't like he just said it came out of a pen on a paper.
I know. It's yeah. I felt very similar just when we did Bartok 6 last year at Paco Camp. I did it in the quartet and the final movement, and you know the way it just ends, and you know what he was going through and what he was
Oh, those
losing,
last
and
chords in Bartok 6 just
uh,
murder me every time.
yeah, and somehow like it's there, right? It's just there can't be anything sadder, losing your homeland and losing your parents and all these things that he was going through as he was
Yeah.
writing this music, right? Um, but there's still like hope because things happen, and as humans we've adapted and we've struggled and we've survived and we've found our way through it, and it's what we do. And there's a spirit that is undeniable, and even in the saddest of pieces, in that opening that is just it's crushing.
Yeah.
There's hope and there's a future in it. There's a future in that music.
Yeah. Because those last, yeah, I feel something kind of rising out of the last chords. And it's like,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, James, I'm happy to say
Cool.
thank
Just
you.
let it be what it is. Yeah. Well, listen, it's been a treat talking to you too, Scott. And
James, and well, and then one of the platform elements of what we're doing here is that together we're better, and we're finding ways to reach out, and we know that there are a lot of good humans out there, and there are people who are making an impact and finding ways to, whether it's supporting essential workers or just letting folks know, like we know that humans have great capacity for good, and that there's a lot of it that we don't necessarily get because as we talked about briefly yesterday, there's an element to being not only isolated but only having our world view through social media, and it starts to narrow kind of our idea of what's possible, I think.
yeah.
And you see that we're a world of great possibility, and finding individuals that demonstrate that light and show that is part of what we're doing here. So together we're better, and that we're showing our best selves, and we wake up and we do what we can while we can. So thank you, James, for doing all that you're doing, and I can't wait to get to high five in person, but for now it gets to be virtual. Whoosh, high five. Well timed and super cool, just like the 80s. And so thank you very much just for what you're giving to the world, and for playing for us this evening. Much appreciated, and wishing you all the best here in the coming months.
Thanks, Scott. And back at you. Thanks for everything you're doing.
My pleasure. All right, everybody. Thanks for stopping by the Scott Krijnen channel. This is James Jaffe. I'll have all the links for all the wonderful things that he's doing. You can find him on the website. You can find him with One Found Sound, an incredible cellist, and an incredible person. Thank you again, James, and thanks to everyone for watching. Everyone have a great night.